Andrew's hands tremble as he stares at the unfamiliar red phone on his side of the bed through his laptop screen. 30 years of marriage crystallized in this single, jarring object. The hotel room closes in around him, its generic art and starchy sheets suddenly prison-like. His wedding band catches the blue light from the screen, a perfect circle now broken by deception. A silent sob rises, caught in his throat as Vivian chatters on, oblivious to his discovery. Has betrayal ever ambushed your life when you least expected it? Share your story below, like if this moment strikes a chord, and follow to witness Andrew's journey from heartbreak to triumph. In his wallet, their wedding photo stares back, younger faces, genuine smiles, a lifetime of promises. Another video call ends with practiced "I love yous," while tears blur his vision. The photo slips from weathered fingers as the first tear falls, splashing onto their paper faces, erasing what he thought was real. Andrew woke with a resolve that surprised him. The hotel room felt different this morning. Less an anonymous way station, more a battle command center. Red-rimmed eyes stared back from the bathroom mirror, but his shoulders straightened with purpose. One night of shock and tears had been enough. He settled at the desk, opening his laptop with the methodical precision that had served him well through 3 decades of business negotiations. The screen illuminated his weathered face as he navigated to the airline website, fingers hovering momentarily before entering his information. The family photo screensaver flashed. Last Thanksgiving, Vivian smiling beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. Had she been checking her phone under the table even then? "Earliest flight home," he murmured, his voice steadier than the slight tremor in his hands. The confirmation appeared with clinical efficiency. Departure in 6 hours. Andrew nodded once, as if concluding a business deal with himself. His wedding band caught the morning light as he reached for his phone. The weight of 30 years pressed against his finger. He scrolled to Patricia's contact, pausing before pressing call. They weren't just in-laws. They were the parents he'd chosen, who'd embraced him as a son from the beginning. Would that change after today? "Patricia, it's Andrew." His voice nearly broke on her name, the first crack in his carefully maintained composure. "I need to ask something important." The immediate concern in her voice nearly undid him. "What's wrong, son?" He closed his eyes, steadying himself against the desk edge. "I'm coming home early. Today, He swallowed hard. "There's something I need to confirm about Vivian." The brief silence told him everything. Then Richard's voice, apparently on extension. "We'll be there. What time?" A single tear escaped, quickly wiped away. Their unquestioning support was its own confirmation. Had they suspected too? "Flight lands at 2, Andrew said, businesslike again. "Could we meet at your place first?" "I'd rather not." He couldn't finish. "We'll pick you up," Patricia said firmly. "And Andrew, whatever it is, we're here." After ending the call, he stood at the window, forehead pressed briefly against the cool glass. Below, the city continued its morning rhythm, oblivious to his collapsing world. 6 hours until the flight. 12 until he'd know for certain if the red phone meant what he feared. He began packing with military precision. Each folded shirt and toiletry a small act of control in a situation spinning beyond his grasp. Tonight, he would either be relieved at his own paranoia or confirmed in the death of his marriage. Either way, Andrew Whitman would face it on his feet. The evening video call with Patricia and Richard steadied Andrew in ways he hadn't anticipated. He sat straighter at the hotel desk, shoulders squared against the lamp's yellow pool of light. "I noticed something during our call last night," he explained, voice controlled despite the slight tremor in his hand. "A red phone on my side of the bed. Not mine." Patricia's sharp intake of breath was audible even through the laptop speakers. Richard's face hardened. The retired judge's expression, one Andrew recognized from courtroom photographs. Assessment, not judgment. "And you're certain it's not something with an explanation?" Richard asked, removing his glasses in that deliberate way that signaled serious discussion. Andrew's fingers unconsciously touched his wedding band. "Vivian's been distracted lately, checking her phone during meals, last month's anniversary dinner." His voice faltered for the first time. "She excused herself twice to take calls she claimed were work-related." The memory surfaced with painful clarity. Candlelight catching the silver in Vivian's hair, her apologetic smile as she slipped away from their table. The 35th anniversary gift box sitting unopened while minutes stretched into a quarter hour. "We'll be there, son," Patricia said, the endearment nearly cracking Andrew's composure. Her arthritic hands fidgeted with a tissue off-screen. Better to know than wonder. They arranged the details with the efficiency of a military operation. Airport pickup, a brief strategy session at their home, then the unannounced arrival at the house Andrew had shared with Vivian for 23 years. "Thank you," Andrew said simply, as the call concluded. The words felt wholly inadequate. Alone again, he checked his watch. Time for his regular evening call with Vivian, the performance of normalcy requiring all his business acumen. When her face appeared on screen, Andrew studied it with new awareness. Had her smile always seemed this practiced? The bedroom behind her was pristine now, no sign of the red phone. "How was your meeting today?" she asked, adjusting her necklace, a nervous habit he once found endearing. "Productive," he replied, the half-truth coming easily. "We should wrap things up tomorrow." "That's wonderful. I'm planning a special dinner for your return this weekend." Andrew maintained perfect pleasantness while his free hand formed a fist so tight his nails left crescent marks on his palm. "Looking forward to it." They exchanged the familiar script of a long-married couple's conversation, meaningless now, like actors reciting lines from a play whose meaning had been lost. "I love you," she said at the end, the words hollowing his chest. "You too," he managed, ending the call. The mask dropped immediately. Andrew pressed his forehead against the cool window glass, shoulders shaking briefly before military discipline reasserted itself. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight required strength. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He glanced down, frowning slightly at the message. "Wrong number, sorry." A strange coincidence, or something more. Andrew set the phone aside, focusing instead on preparations for tomorrow's confrontation with a truth he already felt in his bones. The airport terminal echoed with announcements and hurried footsteps, a world of purpose that felt disconnected from Andrew's internal landscape. He moved through security with mechanical efficiency, his carry-on containing only essentials. 30 years of business travel had taught him to pack light, though never for a journey like this. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Vivian's text glowed on the screen. "Can't wait to see you Saturday. Planning to make your favorite pot roast." The message struck him like a physical blow, her casual deception now transparent. He slipped the phone away without responding, his jaw tightening. At the gate, a flight attendant noticed his distraction. "First time flying?" she asked kindly. "No," Andrew managed a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just heading home earlier than expected." "Sometimes those are the best surprises," she offered. "If you only knew," he thought, nodding without comment. The plane's confinement became unbearable halfway through the flight. Andrew made his way to the tiny bathroom, locking the door before allowing his composure to slip. The mirror reflected a stranger, pale, red-eyed, aged beyond his 62 years overnight. He splashed cold water on his face, watching it drip from silver-templed hair. "Pull yourself together," he whispered to his reflection. "You've negotiated million-dollar deals in worse conditions." But those had been professional crises, not the dismantling of his life's foundation. By the time the plane touched down, Andrew had reconstructed his business persona, calm, strategic, prepared for any outcome. The airport's familiar contours grounded him as he navigated toward the exit, scanning the crowd. Patricia spotted him first, her hand raised in a half-wave that conveyed both welcome and sympathy. Beside her, Richard stood straight-backed despite his 80 years, offering silent strength. "You made it," Patricia said simply, embracing him with surprising fierceness for her small frame. The maternal comfort nearly undid him. Richard's handshake communicated everything words couldn't: solidarity, understanding, resolve. "Car's just outside," he said, taking Andrew's bag with a gesture that brooked no argument. The drive to their home passed in weighted silence. Familiar landmarks scrolled by. The park where he'd pushed Vivian on swings during early courtship. The restaurant where they'd celebrated their 25th anniversary. Each memory now called into question. In Patricia and Richard's living room, family photographs lined the mantel. Andrew's gaze caught on one, his and Vivian's wedding day, her parents beaming beside them. The young couple in the silver frame seemed like strangers now. "Tea?" Patricia asked, already moving toward the kitchen, her way of coping through caretaking. "Something stronger might be better," Richard suggested, studying Andrew's face. Andrew shook his head. "I need clarity today." They discussed approach like strategists planning a campaign, arrival timing, what to say, what not to say. The conversation felt surreal in the warm familiarity of their living room. "You're sure this is what you want?" Patricia asked quietly, maternal instinct seeking to protect him from pain. Andrew nodded once, decisive. "I need to know." As they prepared to leave, Richard's hand settled briefly on Andrew's shoulder, a gesture of strength transfer between men of few words. The trio moved toward the door, the moment of truth approaching with each step. From the back seat of Richard's sedan, Andrew watched his neighborhood materialize around them. When his house came into view, an unfamiliar car sat in the driveway beside Vivian's. His breath caught sharply, the final confirmation he hadn't wanted but somehow needed. "Who's there?" Richard asked, voicing the question hanging in the car's tense atmosphere. Andrew's voice was barely audible. "I believe we're about to find out." Andrew's key slid into the front door lock with a familiar sound now rendered strange by circumstance. Patricia and Richard flanked him like sentinels, their presence lending gravity to what might otherwise seem a routine homecoming. The house felt different, still filled with the furnishings and photographs of 30 years together, yet somehow foreign territory. Andrew moved through the foyer with deliberate steps, his business shoes silent on hardwood he'd had installed 15 years earlier. From upstairs came the unmistakable sound of laughter, Vivian's, followed by a deeper, masculine chuckle he didn't recognize. The three exchanged glances. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line while Richard's jaw tightened beneath his silver beard. No words were necessary. They ascended the stairs in silence, each step bringing Andrew closer to a truth he already knew, but needed to witness. The master bedroom door stood slightly ajar, a slice of afternoon light spilling into the hallway. Within, Vivian's voice spoke playfully about weekend plans, plans that had included Andrew's delayed return. He pushed the door open fully. 3 silhouettes framed in the doorway created a tableau that froze the scene beyond. Vivian and a man perhaps 10 years younger than Andrew, wine glasses in hand, seated intimately close on the bed, their bed. Time seemed suspended in the moment of discovery. Vivian's wineglass slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. The red liquid spread slowly, seeping into the grain like a metaphor made visible. "Andrew," she whispered, face draining of color, "you're not supposed to be home until—" "Saturday." "Yes, I know." His voice sounded foreign to his own ears, eerily calm, detached. "I decided to surprise you instead." His gaze shifted to the stranger. "You must be Alden." The man stood awkwardly, straightening clothes with practiced efficiency that suggested habit. "Look, this isn't—" "Please don't insult me by saying it isn't what it looks like," Andrew interrupted, the perfect civility of his tone more devastating than anger. Alden retreated toward the ensuite bathroom, muttering about giving them privacy. As he passed Vivian, he whispered, "Call me later," clearly audible in the room's tense silence. 6 months, Andrew stated rather than asked, watching recognition flicker across Vivian's face. "The business trips that ran late, the work calls during our anniversary dinner." Vivian stepped toward him, hands outstretched. "Andrew, please." He took one precise step backward, a physical rejection more eloquent than words. Behind him, Patricia made a small sound, not quite a sob. "I suspected something," she admitted quietly to Andrew. "The way she checked her phone constantly at Sunday dinners. I didn't want to believe it." Vivian's head snapped toward her mother. "You're taking his side?" "This isn't about sides, Vivian." Richard spoke for the first time, disappointment heavy in his voice. "This is about choices and consequences." Andrew moved to the closet with unsettling composure, pulling out an overnight bag. "I'll be staying elsewhere while I contact a lawyer. I'll arrange to collect the rest of my things later." He packed methodically: toiletries, medications, 2 changes of clothes. The wedding photograph on the nightstand caught his attention. Without comment, he placed it face down, the gesture more final than any declaration. In the bathroom, away from watchful eyes, a single moment of privacy allowed the mask to slip. Silent, heaving sobs shook his shoulders as he gathered his razor and toothbrush. 30 seconds of pure anguish before discipline reasserted itself, face splashed with cold water, composure regained. When he emerged, Vivian was crying, makeup streaking down her cheeks. "Please, can we talk about this? It doesn't have to end." "It already has," Andrew said simply, zipping the bag closed with finality. 30 years ended the moment you decided our vows were negotiable. He left with dignity intact, Patricia and Richard following in somber procession. The red wine continued spreading across the bedroom floor, staining everything it touched, much like the truth that had finally been exposed to light. The hotel lobby gleamed with polished marble and understated luxury, a fitting backdrop for the corporate mask Andrew wore like armor. He approached the front desk with the confident stride that had served him through decades of business negotiations. "Good evening, sir. How may I help you?" The young receptionist's professional smile revealed nothing about the red-rimmed eyes she surely noticed. "I need a room for tonight," Andrew replied, platinum credit card sliding across the counter with practiced ease. His voice betrayed nothing of the collapse happening behind his ribs. "Of course, Mr. Whitman. We have a king suite available on the 14th floor. Small talk, pleasantries, signatures, the rituals of transaction provided blessed structure." The key card in his hand felt like the only solid thing in a world suddenly liquid with uncertainty. "Will you be needing assistance with luggage?" "No, thank you. I'm traveling light." The elevator ascended in merciful emptiness. Andrew stared at his reflection in the polished doors, silver hair still neatly combed, tie still perfectly knotted, only the shadows beneath his eyes hinting at catastrophe. The suite door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow broke the last of his control. The overnight bag slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers. 2 steps carried him to the bed before his knees gave way. The first sob tore from his chest with physical pain, 30 years of trust collapsing into a single guttural sound. Andrew pressed his face into the unfamiliar pillow, decades of stoicism dissolving into heaving shoulders and gasping breaths. In the privacy of anonymity, he finally allowed himself to shatter completely. No witness saw the distinguished businessman curl into himself like a wounded animal. No one heard the broken whispers, why, and 30 years, and finally, what was real. When the storm subsided to shuddering breaths, Andrew found himself staring at the generic hotel artwork, peaceful landscapes designed to offend no one and move no one. The perfect backdrop for a life suddenly without anchor. His phone vibrated with Vivian's name on the screen. He silenced it without answering. Another call, then another. Eventually, a text. "Please come home. We need to talk. It wasn't what you think." Andrew placed the phone face down on the nightstand. There were calls he needed to make, but not yet. Not while his voice might still break. The bathroom mirror revealed a stranger, hollowed eyes in a face aged overnight. Andrew splashed cold water over features he no longer fully recognized. "Who are you now?" he whispered to his reflection. "Who are you without her?" The question lingered, unanswerable. Later, when composure had been reconstructed from necessity, he made the required calls. To his office, a personal emergency requiring a few days' leave. To a recommended divorce attorney, an appointment scheduled with mechanical efficiency. To a real estate agent, inquiries about short-term rentals. Each practical step anchored him in action rather than emotion. Each decision a small reclamation of control. As evening deepened into night, sleep remained impossible. Andrew sat fully clothed on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Occasionally, his hand would rise to touch his wedding band, the weight of it suddenly foreign against his skin. With deliberate movements, he twisted the gold circle that had defined him for 3 decades. It caught briefly at his knuckle, a final resistance, before sliding free. The small sound it made against the glass-top nightstand seemed to echo in the room's silence. Morning arrived with cruel brightness. Andrew stood at the window, watching the city awaken while he moved through ablutions with robotic precision. The tear-stained pillowcase caught his eye, evidence of weakness that brought a flush of embarrassment before resignation settled. Even titans fell. Even mountains crumbled. His phone displayed 27 missed calls and 13 messages. He scrolled past Vivian's name to find one from Patricia. "We're here when you're ready. No rush, no pressure. Family stands together." The simple text brought fresh tears that he quickly mastered. One breakdown was sufficient. Leaving the hotel room required assembling the public version of Andrew Whitman. Shoulders back, chin up, eyes forward. No one watching him cross the lobby would guess that beneath his precisely knotted tie lay a heart beating with new uncertainty. Outside, he walked without destination, city streets flowing around him like a river around stone. A toy store window caught his attention unexpectedly. A display of stuffed animals arranged in family groupings. He paused, something in the simple tableau connecting with a loneliness he couldn't yet articulate. For 30 years, his identity had been partly defined by being Vivian's husband. Now, at 62, Andrew faced the bewildering task of redefining himself when society expected settled certainty. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, beneath the grief, he felt the first fragile stirring of an unexpected question. What now? Has betrayal ever left you questioning everything you thought was true? Share your experience below, like if Andrew's pain resonates with you, and follow to discover how he finds strength when all seems lost. The divorce attorney's office projected exactly what Andrew expected: competent prosperity without ostentation. Cherry wood furnishings, leather-bound law books, and discreet awards created an atmosphere of assured professionalism. "The circumstances are straightforward, Mr. Whitman," Lydia Morales said, scanning the notes she'd taken during their hour-long consultation. Her silver-streaked hair and direct gaze suggested a contemporary who wouldn't waste his time with platitudes. Infidelity clearly established, no minor children, significant assets, but mostly equitable division given the length of the marriage. Andrew nodded, signing the preliminary paperwork with the same steady hand that had closed countless business deals. Only the slight tightness around his eyes betrayed emotion as a single tear escaped, quickly wiped away. "Many clients find this moment difficult," Lydia observed, neither uncomfortable nor overly sympathetic. "Ending a 30-year contract is significant, regardless of circumstances." "Contract," Andrew repeated, finding unexpected comfort in the businesslike framing. "Yes, that's precisely what was broken." 3 days later, he stood in a sparsely furnished apartment, temporary housing arranged through a corporate service that catered to executives between homes. The beige walls and generic furniture offered neither comfort nor distress, a blank canvas reflecting his indeterminate state. He unpacked methodically, each item from his hastily gathered possessions finding a designated space. At the bottom of a box containing desk items, Andrew discovered a photograph he didn't remember packing. Himself and Vivian in their early 40s, standing on a Spanish beach, arms wrapped around each other against an ocean breeze. He studied the image with detached curiosity. The trip had been their 15th anniversary gift to each other, a 2-week exploration of coastal villages they'd promised to revisit in retirement. The laughing couple in the photograph seemed like strangers now, particularly the dark-haired woman whose smile revealed nothing of her capacity for deception. A knock at the door interrupted his contemplation. Patricia and Richard stood in the hallway, bearing casserole dishes and concerned expressions. "We thought you might not have stocked the kitchen yet," Patricia explained, moving past him with the familiar authority of a mother who wouldn't be denied the right to nurture. Richard's handshake conveyed masculine understanding. "How are you holding up?" "Functioning," Andrew replied, the honest assessment requiring no elaboration between men who valued pragmatism. The simple dinner transformed the sterile apartment momentarily, conversation and gentle laughter creating a pocket of warmth in his newly solitary life. They carefully avoided direct mentions of Vivian until coffee was served. "She's alone now," Patricia said without sympathy, placing her cup precisely on its saucer. Alden left the day after everything happened. Apparently, once the secret was gone, so was the excitement. Andrew absorbed this information with a complex emotion he couldn't immediately identify. Not satisfaction in her suffering, not pain at her abandonment, perhaps simply confirmation of his assessment of Alden's character. "We want you to know," Richard added, leaning forward slightly, "that whatever happens between you and Vivian, your relationship with us doesn't change. Some connections transcend technical definitions of family. The unexpected reassurance nearly undid Andrew's composure. He nodded, not trusting his voice immediately. As they prepared to leave, he noticed Patricia had left something on the counter, a travel magazine open to an article about expatriate communities in coastal Spain. The dog-eared page seemed too deliberate for accident, the highlighted paragraph about retiree visa requirements too specific for coincidence. "You forgot your magazine," he said, holding it out. Patricia waved dismissively. "I finished with it. Thought you might find it interesting. You always did talk about Spain." After they departed, Andrew found himself returning to the magazine, then to his laptop. Before he quite realized his intention, he was researching Spanish coastal properties, cost of living comparisons, expatriate social groups. An old dream, Spanish retirement, previously shelved in deference to Vivian's preference for maintaining proximity to her social circle. Now the postponed possibility re-emerged, not as escape, but as reinvention. The idea should have terrified him at 62, yet it stirred something long dormant. The Spain photograph still lay on the counter where he'd left it. Andrew picked it up again, but now his gaze focused on the background, the sunlit village climbing the hillside, the Mediterranean stretching endlessly blue. He'd been happy there, he realized, in a way that had little to do with the woman beside him and everything to do with the place itself. A surprising laugh escaped him, the first genuine one since that fateful video call. The sound startled him in the quiet apartment. Who would have imagined that Vivian's betrayal might ultimately open doors rather than merely close them? His research continued late into the evening, expanding unexpectedly from property listings to international adoption policies. That particular search surprised even him, the algorithms responding to some unspoken longing he hadn't consciously acknowledged. Andrew stopped, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Was he truly contemplating such a radical reinvention at his age? Conventional wisdom dictated slowing down, not embarking on unprecedented challenges. And yet conventional wisdom hadn't prepared him for discovering his wife's infidelity after 30 years of marriage. Perhaps its other assumptions deserved equal skepticism. He closed the laptop, not ready for conclusions, but suddenly aware of possibilities. The apartment still felt temporary, but now that impermanence seemed promising rather than unsettling. For the first time since the red phone had caught his attention, Andrew fell asleep without his thoughts circling back to betrayal. Morning brought the first real smile he'd seen in his bathroom mirror since returning home early. The expression felt foreign on his face, but not unwelcome, like the first thaw after an unexpectedly harsh winter. Andrew hadn't planned to volunteer. The community center flyer caught his attention during his morning walk. Reading buddies needed share your love of books, and something in the simple request connected with the emptiness of his evenings. "We're especially short on male volunteers," the coordinator explained during his orientation, a harried woman in her 40s whose grateful smile made him glad he'd stepped forward. "Many of our children have limited male presence in their lives." The children's section occupied a sunlit corner of the community center. Worn carpet squares in primary colors, low shelves lined with picture books, small plastic chairs that forced adults to sit with knees awkwardly elevated. Andrew settled into the routine each Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the structured giving of his time and attention becoming an unexpected anchor in his newly unmoored life. He noticed Charlotte during his second week, a solemn-faced 7-year-old who chose the same book repeatedly, a story about a rabbit family moving to a new warren. She approached his reading station with deliberate steps, dark braids framing serious eyes that studied him with unchildlike assessment. "Would you like me to read this one?" Andrew asked, already knowing her selection before she placed it in his hands. Charlotte nodded, settling beside him rather than opposite like the other children. "It's my favorite," she said, voice soft but distinct. "They have to move homes, but they're okay at the end." Something in her careful articulation touched him. Andrew read with special attention to the voices, earning the first small smile he'd seen on her serious face. During his third session, the social worker who accompanied Charlotte lingered afterward. "She asks specifically for you now," she mentioned quietly. "That's unusual. Charlotte's typically reserved with new adults." "She has excellent taste in literature," Andrew replied, earning a chuckle. "She's in temporary placement," the woman added, her tone professional but with underlying concern. "We're seeking a permanent solution, but the system moves slowly sometimes." The information settled in Andrew's mind without immediate significance. The following week brought an unexpected moment of connection. Andrew had arrived early, browsing the children's section before his scheduled time. As he reached for a book about Spain that caught his eye, a small hand extended toward the same volume. "Sorry," he said, withdrawing automatically. "It's okay," Charlotte replied, their eyes meeting in mutual recognition. "You can look first." Andrew crouched to her level, the Spain book between them. "We could look together if you'd like." She nodded, settling cross-legged on the carpet square. The book opened to colorful photographs of Barcelona's architecture, coastal villages, and children playing on Mediterranean beaches. "Have you been there?" Charlotte asked, finger tracing a particularly vibrant seaside scene. "Once, long ago," Andrew answered truthfully. "I've been thinking about going again." Charlotte studied him with that disconcerting directness. "Are you sad like me?" The question, so unexpected, so perceptive, momentarily stole Andrew's practiced composure. Adult instinct urged deflection, but something in her gaze demanded honesty. "Yes," he admitted quietly, "I am." She nodded, accepting this information without surprise. "My mom and dad died in a car crash. That's why I'm sad." "I'm very sorry," Andrew said, the inadequate words carrying genuine feeling. "What happened to make you sad?" she asked. The directness children are permitted before society teaches circumspection. Andrew considered how to respond appropriately. "Someone I trusted for a very long time broke that trust. It hurt my heart." Charlotte absorbed this with solemn understanding beyond her years. "Ms. Diane says sometimes our hearts break, so they can grow bigger when they heal." "Ms. Diane sounds very wise," Andrew replied, unexpectedly moved. Their shared examination of the Spain book continued, Charlotte sounding out Spanish words with his help, her serious concentration and his surprised pleasure in teaching creating a bubble of connection neither had anticipated. Later, as Andrew gathered his belongings to leave, the center director approached. "You've made quite an impression on Charlotte," she observed. "It's wonderful to see her connecting." "She's an extraordinary child," Andrew replied simply. "We're always looking for permanent placement options," she continued, her tone casual but eyes evaluating, "including international adoption possibilities. Some countries have programs specifically for older children, though the process can be complex." Andrew nodded politely, not immediately recognizing the conversation's significance. That evening in his apartment, however, the director's words resurfaced as he researched Spanish residency requirements. A tangential search revealed that Spain's adoption policies for older children included provisions for single applicants over 60, though with additional scrutiny. He set his laptop aside, startled by the direction of his thoughts. The idea was preposterous. A man his age, recently separated, contemplating not just relocation, but parenthood. Yet Charlotte's direct question echoed, "Are you sad like me?" Two solitary hearts, each broken in different ways. Andrew stood in his apartment doorway, turning to look back at the empty space. For the first time, he imagined it filled differently, not with Vivian's presence, but with a child's books, with learning materials for Spanish lessons, with the purpose that comes from being needed. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like the first true breath after months of suffocation. Could you reinvent your entire life after 60? Comment your thoughts below, like if Andrew's courage inspires you, and follow to witness his life-changing decision that will leave Vivian truly alone. The adoption application felt surreal in Andrew's hands, page after page of questions designed to determine his fitness for parenthood at an age when most men were becoming grandfathers. The social worker assigned to his case had been surprisingly encouraging despite her initial raised eyebrows. Your financial stability, professional background, and character references are exceptional, Mr. Whitman, she'd noted during their third interview. Age is certainly a factor we consider, but not the only one, or even the most important. Patricia and Richard had provided glowing testimonials without hesitation. Their support extended beyond words. They'd helped him navigate the labyrinthine process with the same dedication they'd shown since that fateful day of discovery. Parallel to the adoption proceedings, Andrew's research into Spanish coastal towns had yielded results. A modest villa in a community popular with international residents within walking distance of a well-regarded school. The virtual tour revealed sunlit rooms opening onto a small garden, the Mediterranean visible from the terrace. He'd made an offer the same day, surprising himself with his decisiveness. When the real estate agent emailed confirmation of acceptance, Andrew sat staring at his laptop screen, the enormity of the changes he was initiating suddenly overwhelming. Was he acting out of genuine desire or merely running from pain? The final divorce papers arrived via courier the following morning, Vivian's signature already on the appropriate lines. No contest to the equitable division of assets he'd proposed. The document represented the official end to 30 years of shared life, reduced to legal terminology and asset allocations. Andrew signed with steady hand, the weight of finality both sobering and strangely liberating. His phone rang as he sealed the envelope. Patricia's name appeared on the screen. "We've been thinking," she said without preamble after he answered. "Spain is only an 8-hour flight. We could visit quarterly, perhaps stay a month during winter when Richard's arthritis acts up in the cold." The unexpected declaration of continued connection brought a lump to Andrew's throat. "You'd do that?" "Family doesn't end at national borders," she replied simply. "Besides, I've always wanted to learn Spanish." The adoption agency called later that afternoon. His application had advanced to the next stage of consideration. The home study would need to include the Spanish property details, additional international requirements, but Charlotte's caseworker had noted their connection specifically in her recommendations. That night, alone in his apartment surrounded by half-packed boxes, paralyzing doubt struck without warning. Andrew sat on the floor, passport and property documents spread before him, the sheer audacity of his plans suddenly seeming like madness. Who was he to believe he could start fresh at 62? What hubris to think he could provide proper parenting to a child who had already experienced profound loss. The sensible path would be a quiet retirement, perhaps a smaller home nearby, the comfortable diminishment society expected of men his age. Sleep proved impossible. At 3 in the morning, Andrew found himself staring at his passport photo, a stranger's eyes looking back. The man who had boarded a plane to confront his wife's infidelity now contemplated flying toward an entirely reinvented life. He reached for his phone, scrolling to Richard's contact. Despite the hour, the older man answered on the third ring, voice alert as if expecting the call. "I can't sleep," Andrew admitted, a rare confession of vulnerability. "Cold feet are normal before big jumps," Richard replied, the background noise suggesting he'd moved to another room to avoid waking Patricia. "Doesn't mean you shouldn't jump." "What if I'm too old for this?" The question emerged unbidden, carrying all his unspoken fears. Too old for what? Happiness? Purpose? Connection? Richard's tone held no judgment, only genuine inquiry. "The scariest changes often bring the best rewards, son. I've never seen you more ready for anything in your life." The conversation continued until dawn lightened the sky, Richard's steady wisdom counterbalancing Andrew's doubts without dismissing them. As they spoke, Andrew found himself sorting through the confusion to the core truth. Despite the fear, he wanted this new life more than he feared its challenges. Morning brought Charlotte's arrival with her social worker for a pre-approved visit. When their car pulled up, Andrew watched through the window as the child spotted him, her serious face lighting with recognition. She emerged clutching a book about Spanish marine life, clearly selected with purpose. "I brought this to show you," she announced, after minimal greetings, opening to a page about Mediterranean sea turtles. "They live near where we might go." The simple "we" penetrated Andrew's lingering doubts like sunlight through fog. Charlotte had already made the mental leap he'd been agonizing over, seeing them as a potential unit, a family created from shared understanding of loss. Her small hand slipped naturally into his as they entered the apartment, the gesture requiring no discussion or analysis. In that moment of connection, fear gave way to certainty. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, two solitary hearts finding unexpected healing in each other. 1 year later, the Spanish sunrise painted the Mediterranean in shades of amber and rose, a daily spectacle that Andrew still paused to appreciate. He stood on the villa's terrace, coffee mug warming his hands, watching light transform the water. Behind him, through open French doors, came the familiar sounds of Charlotte preparing for school, drawers opening, water running, the occasional hummed fragment of a Spanish folk song she'd learned from their neighbor Maria. "Papa, have you seen my science notebook?" Charlotte called, her voice echoing through the sunlit rooms. "Check beside the bookshelf," Andrew replied, smiling at the domesticity of the exchange. "You were reading about turtles before bed." The past year had transformed both their lives in ways neither could have anticipated. Charlotte's serious face now regularly brightened with laughter, her initial solemnity giving way to the natural exuberance of a secure 8-year-old. Spanish flowed from her tongue with the effortless facility of the young, her accent already more authentic than Andrew's carefully practiced pronunciation. Andrew set his coffee down to help her gather school supplies, the routine of their mornings a choreography they'd perfected over months of shared life. Charlotte's blue backpack, decorated with marine creatures, waited by the door, lunch already packed inside. "Remember, Abuela and Abuelo arrive today," he reminded her, straightening the collar of her school uniform. Charlotte's face lit up. "Can we meet their plane, please?" "Of course. I'll pick you up early from school." Patricia and Richard's third visit coincided with Charlotte's birthday, a timing they'd arranged with deliberate thoughtfulness. Their quarterly stays had become highlights of the calendar, their presence expanding the family circle Charlotte had never expected to have again. They walked to school together, a 15-minute journey along the promenade that paralleled the beach. Charlotte's hand naturally found Andrew's, a connection neither remarked upon but both treasured. The international school's gates teemed with children of various nationalities, a global community that had welcomed them without reservation. "Buenos dias, Señor Whitman," called Senora Morales, Charlotte's teacher. Charlotte's project on marine conservation was excellent. Perhaps she gets her environmental conscience from you. "I believe that's entirely her own development," Andrew replied proudly, watching Charlotte join her friends, a small cluster of girls from Spain, Germany, and Brazil who chattered in a fluid mixture of languages. The transformation in his daughter still amazed him. From the solemn child in the community center to this confident young person required no exaggeration to be deemed miraculous. The adoption finalization 6 months earlier had been merely legal recognition of what they both already knew. They were family, chosen and cherished. Andrew continued his morning walk after dropping Charlotte, nodding greetings to now familiar faces. Maria waved from her balcony, where she arranged fresh flowers, her weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Cafe later?" she called down in her accented English. "After I pick up Patricia and Richard," he confirmed. Maria had become their first local friend, the widowed former teacher taking them under her wing with unobtrusive kindness. Her lessons extended beyond language to the subtleties of local culture, her patience with Andrew's questions never faltering. Back at the villa, Andrew prepared for his afternoon English conversation class, a volunteer position at the local adult education center that had evolved into a part-time teaching role. The irony wasn't lost on him. After decades in corporate finance, he'd found unexpected fulfillment helping fishermen and shopkeepers improve their English for the tourist season. His phone chimed with a video call notification. James Wilson, a former colleague who had maintained contact despite the distance. "Andrew, how's Spanish living treating you?" James asked after greetings were exchanged. "Can't complain," Andrew replied, angling the camera toward the sea view. "Better than gray corporate boardrooms, I'll bet." James chuckled, then his expression turned more serious. "Ran into Vivian at the Peterson Charity Gala last week." Andrew felt the familiar dip in his stomach at her name, though the sharp pain had long since transmuted into something more akin to distant regret for what had been lost. "How is she?" "Not great," James admitted, discomfort evident. "Alden's long gone, of course. She seemed—" he searched for the right word. "Isolated. Most of the old crowd has drifted away. She asked about you." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're thriving, that you and Charlotte seem genuinely happy." James hesitated. She didn't know about the adoption. It hit her hard. Andrew nodded, absorbing this without particular satisfaction. Natural consequences required no orchestration on his part. "I hope she finds her way." The conversation shifted to more pleasant topics: mutual friends, industry changes, James's upcoming retirement. After ending the call, Andrew stood at the terrace railing, contemplating how differently his life might have unfolded without that fateful video call and the red phone that had caught his attention. Grief had given way to gratitude. Betrayal transformed into unexpected blessing. The wedding band that had marked 30 years of marriage now existed in altered form, melted down and reshaped into a pendant Charlotte wore around her neck, a tangible symbol of how pain could be transformed into something beautiful and new. Later, at the airport, Charlotte bounced with excitement as Patricia and Richard emerged from the arrivals gate. At 81 and 79, respectively, they moved more slowly now, but with the determined energy of people with purpose. Patricia's embrace enfolded both Andrew and Charlotte simultaneously, while Richard's handshake transformed into an uncharacteristic but heartfelt hug. "Let me look at you both," Patricia demanded, stepping back to assess them with grandmother's prerogative. "Spain clearly agrees with you." The drive home featured Charlotte's animated updates on school projects, local festivals, and the sea turtle she'd adopted through a conservation program. The adults exchanged glances over her head, shared joy requiring no verbalization. That evening, after Charlotte had finally succumbed to sleep, despite excitement about tomorrow's birthday celebrations, the three adults sat on the terrace with glasses of local wine. Stars emerged above the darkened Mediterranean, the gentle sound of waves providing peaceful accompaniment to their conversation. "I never imagined this outcome when we drove to your house that day," Patricia admitted, her hand resting on Andrew's forearm. "Out of such pain, such happiness." "Life rarely follows the expected path," Richard observed, philosophical in his elder wisdom. Andrew's gaze drifted to the family calendar hanging in the kitchen, visible through the open doors. Patricia and Richard's visit occupied the current weeks, Charlotte's birthday circled in red, his new teaching schedule penciled in the margins. A life rebuilt from fragments, richer in some ways than what had been lost. On the terrace table lay Charlotte's latest school project, a family tree that included not just Andrew, Patricia, and Richard, but Maria and Charlotte's school friends, a chosen constellation of connection that defied conventional definition but provided genuine belonging. A happy tear escaped, sliding down Andrew's tanned cheek as he watched the evening star emerge above the horizon. "Not all who wander are lost," he reflected. "Sometimes they're simply finding their way home by an unexpected route." The stars emerged above the Mediterranean like old friends Andrew had somehow never properly met during his corporate years. Sitting on his terrace with Patricia and Richard, wine glasses catching the last light, he found himself overwhelmed by a gratitude so profound it manifested as a single tear tracking down his weathered cheek. "A penny for those thoughts," Patricia said, her observant eyes missing nothing despite her 79 years. Andrew smiled, gesturing toward the family calendar visible through the open French doors. Their visits marked in red, Charlotte's birthday circled enthusiastically, his teaching schedule penciled neatly in margins that once would have contained merger deadlines and shareholder meetings. "I was just thinking how none of this was in my plan," he admitted. "At 62, I had my future mapped out so carefully. Retirement with Vivian, perhaps some consulting work, grandchildren eventually, if her son ever settled down." Richard nodded, understanding without need for elaboration. "Life makes fools of planners, always has." "Yet here we are," Andrew continued, his gaze drifting to Charlotte's latest school project on the side table, a family tree that defied conventional structure. Besides Andrew at its center, she had included Patricia and Richard as abuela and abuelo, Maria from next door as Spanish grandmother, her school friends as sister cousins, and even her adopted sea turtle as ocean brother. The construction paper creation contained more wisdom than most corporate mission statements he'd helped craft over decades. Family defined not by blood, but by choice and care, belonging created through intention rather than obligation. "You know," Patricia said, swirling the local wine thoughtfully, "when we drove to your house that day, I was terrified we'd find you broken beyond repair. I've seen what betrayal does to people your age, the bitterness that calcifies, the retreat into isolation, the surrender to diminishment." "I considered those paths," Andrew acknowledged. "There were moments in that hotel room when I couldn't imagine ever feeling whole again." What made the difference? Richard asked, the retired judge still seeking understanding of human resilience. Andrew contemplated the question, watching lights from fishing boats appearing on the darkening horizon. I think perhaps it was when I stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What might this make possible?" The distinction had been transformative, the shift from victim of circumstances to author of response. Each decision afterward had flowed from that reorientation. Volunteering at the community center, connecting with Charlotte, researching Spain, choosing reinvention over retreat. I wonder sometimes, he continued, how many people our age surrender to narrowing horizons because it's expected rather than because it's desired. Society does have rather rigid notions about appropriate behavior for the silver-haired set. Patricia agreed with characteristic directness. Particularly about starting fresh, as if wisdom accumulated over decades should be preserved in amber, rather than applied to new adventures. From inside came the soft sound of Charlotte turning in her sleep, a child who had also found unexpected new beginnings when stability seemed forever lost. Their parallel journeys had converged through mutual recognition of both pain and possibility. "You've created something beautiful here," Richard said, his usual reticence softened by wine and starlight. "Not despite the pain, but perhaps because of how you moved through it." The observation resonated with Andrew's own reflections. The betrayal had cracked open his carefully constructed life, revealing both its hollow spots and its unrecognized strength. Like Charlotte's pendant, his melted wedding band transformed into something new and precious. Pain had been neither denied nor enshrined, but rather reshaped into something that honored both what was lost and what remained possible. Tomorrow would bring Charlotte's birthday celebration, the small garden already decorated for her party. Friends from school would arrive bearing gifts. Maria would bring her famous orange cake, and the day would unfold in a melody of languages and laughter that would have been unimaginable in his previous life. "To unexpected journeys," Andrew proposed, raising his glass in the starlight. "And to those wise enough to take them," Patricia added, completing the toast. As they clinked glasses, Andrew gazed once more at the night sky above his Spanish home. The cosmic perspective was humbling yet comforting, his life both infinitesimal and infinite in its capacity for renewal. At 63, with decades of experience in his bones and newfound wonder in his heart, Andrew Whitman had discovered that the most beautiful chapters might be those we never thought to write for ourselves.